Hi everyone, a lot of you have been asking me how I make my flowers like these seen here. And I just wanted to let you know first off that the first part of the flower I learned how to make through Chris at Lion Punch Forge. The second part of the flower I kind of did my own take on, and then the stamens that come out of the flower. And I'll leave a link to his Instagram and whatever else I can find links for him and in the comments. But there's a tool that I got from him, and this is how I learned how to make these flowers. And the tool is these. These are his purple punches. This is one that I've been using for a while. As you can see, it's kind of mushroomed and gotten like a little head, a head of hair on it. But this is made from a certain kind of wood. I forget the name of the wood, but it's purple, and it's actually really beautiful. But these are really affordable, and you can pick them up on Chris's website at Lion Punch Forge. So let's get started. Okay, so basically what I do is I print little flowers out. You can find this easily on the internet, or you can draw your own and draw them. I draw them right onto postage labels. And these are about 13.5 millimeters wide. But then what I do is I wanted to have this more of a pointed petal. So I draw in little points on the petal, and I use a compass to make a circle around there. Basically that ends up being about 22 millimeters, about the size of a quarter, maybe a little bit smaller, not quite an inch wide. So after I do that, I cut those out and I stick that right on top of a piece of silver and saw them out. So that's the point where I'm starting you off in this video, is these are already sawn out. We don't need to go through that. I do saw into the petal, as you can see, like right in there, almost to the center. Not so much where I'll cut the petal off, but you do want to have some space there so that we can shape this with our tool from Chris at Lion Punch Forge. All right, so the first thing we want to do is add some texture onto these petals. And what I like to use is I have these, now that's a hammer from Frets. I got mine at Pepe Tools. These came in a set, and I like to use the thinnest one of these cross pins right here. That makes a really fine line. So we're gonna use that one. And what I'm gonna do is just come in here, let me get a little closer. Maybe there, okay. And make some lines going across each one of these petals. They don't have to be perfect, just enough to give it some texture. We're gonna do a whole lot more to these little flowers. And I'm gonna do all 4 of these, and then I'll come back and we'll move on to the next step. Well, now that I have my camera oriented the right way, the rest of the video will be better. So now I have all of these with textures on them. I'm gonna take them over to my torch, and I have to anneal these before we can move on to the next step. At this point, we're still at the way Chris teaches how to make these flowers over on his YouTube page. So I'll be back with these annealed. Okay, so these are all annealed, and we're gonna move on to the next step, which is shaping this with Chris's really cool purple punch tool. Now I want this texture to be on the outside of my flower, so we're gonna flip these all over and now work on this side of the flower. So I don't know if you can see this, but right here in my stump, there's like almost like a little hole, and I'm gonna be using that. You can do this in a piece of wood, or if you have a stump, you'll work your way into that. I've kind of worked my way into all these little holes just by hammering and using them. But that's going to create our dome. Now the really cool thing is that I could do the same thing, doming with a dapping block, but this, Chris's tool, prevents me from losing my texture that I've created on my flowers. I don't want to lose that texture. So in doing it with a wooden tool, you don't lose your texture. So what I want to do is, just to get this started, I'm going to put that right on the edge of my little hole that's already in my wood. And I want to use a fairly heavy hammer for this. Doesn't matter what kind. I hope I don't hit my camera. And what I'm going to do is just lean this a little bit on an angle, and I'm going to push or hammer that right into my petal so that it creates a little dome in the petal. So there's one, and that really did, oh there, that one right there has a nice little dome on it. And I'm going to go all the way around and do all of those little petals like that. And the other thing I want to do, let me go get a pair of pliers. The other thing that I want to do is take a pair of pliers, and I just want to give a little bit of a twist on each petal, just a little bit, so that as I dome my flower, the petals overlap one another. So in this case, one will be over, one will be under, one will be over, one will be under, and they don't butt into one another and prevent it from forming a nice dome. All right, so I'm going to go back to this. So that is the beginning of one of my flowers. And I haven't lost the texture. As you can see, I'm kind of tipping that back as I go. Tipping the purple punch forward or that, like in that direction as I hit. It kind of rotates forward. So now I've got all my flowers ready for the the next step. This is where I move away from what Chris has taught in how to make these, and I move into how I make mine. This part you have to be a little careful with, because now we're moving into forming these in metal. So what I like to do is take your dapping block, and I'm just going to make the dome of this a little bit more pronounced. We're going to do it in 2 steps. So the first step is going to be this sort of medium. You're going to have to use your own. Every dapping block I think is different. Same sizes, but I'm just going to put that in there and just do it like once, twice if you really have to. Yeah, twice I had to, but I still have texture. Thing is I don't want to lose my texture. So now I want to go one smaller. And I think for this one, wow, that's dusty. Haven't used that in a while. I'm going to hit that just one more because I want it just a little bit smaller. Yeah. That looks almost perfect. I'll take it on this larger one. And then to this next one. There, perfect. And then we'll do it again. But the idea is that you don't want to lose your texture. Or put a big bleeping ding in it like I just did with that first one. Oh well, happens. I'll fix it. Which is kind of good because I'll show you how I fix it. What we want to do next is take these petals and curl them in just a little bit more to make them just a little bit tighter of a bud in there. And what I like to do is, these are a pair of old marred up pliers. They're perfect. And I'm going to take a piece of tape and just put that right on the plier, so that it doesn't mar up my metal even further. I'm just going to wrap that around there, fold it off, and then cut it right where the tip is. Maybe a little bit further than the tip. And that makes a nice little cush for me to grab hold of these little flowers. And I'm going to grab it like this, but I'll show you. And what I want to do is, I'm going to open my angle up here a little bit so you can see. I'm going to take my wrist, my right wrist, and that's going to pull down like this. I haven't squeezed yet, so I haven't done anything yet to it, but I'm basically just want to kind of round these in just a little more so the tip of the petal folds in. Now I'm going to zoom back in and we'll get going on this. I'm just going to grab it as best as I can and just give it a little pinch and pull. And that just curled that in just a little bit more. Next one. All right, then the last step, and you're gonna be like, but you just curled those in. We got them nice and rounded, right? On that previous step. Now I just wanna take the very tips of my flower petals and curl those back out again. I know. Oops. And perhaps I should anneal these again, but I think I can get it. Just the tips of the petals. They get pulled, curved back out again. This one needs a little more. Actually, these are so sharp. I think what we'll do is go ahead and sand those tips down a little bit and then go back in and curl them out. The stem is made up of an 18 gauge sterling silver wire, and I'm just going to cut 4 pieces about 2 inches. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we just want it basically a 2-inch long piece. And what I'm going to do with these to make the stem is turn these into pinheads. If you know how to do that, you can skip the next part of this video. Otherwise, I'll try to show you. Heat the whole wire and then concentrate on the bottom, but don't go too far, the ball will fall off. Plop it in your pickle pot. So basically what I did was I came in here and I really thought my video was playing, but it wasn't. So I missed that whole thing. Well, all you want to do is come in with your cutters and then cut a little bit of that off, like halfway. Not even halfway, just a little bit less than halfway, and just snip the end of that ball off. And then what I did was I came in with my 800 grit sanding disc and just sanded that off nice and smooth. And then finally, before we solder, I took the bottom of each one of these flowers and sanded the bottom off of the flowers. Now we'll go back over to my soldering station and we'll solder that. Look how nice that looks. Solder that little stem onto the bottom there. Okay. Just gonna warm these up a little bit before I flux them. Dry them off. I'm using hard solder if I have any cut. Don't really, so I'm going to use medium solder. Place a little chip of solder on there and then melt it in. I'm going to go all the way around. I'm going to heat up a little chip till it balls, and then touch it with my cool solder pick. Come over here, heat up my piece that I'm going to put that solder on. Just heat it up a little bit, then touch it there and it'll come right off, and let it melt in. So fast, so easy. Touch that, ball it up, touch it with a relatively cool solder pick. If your solder pick gets too hot, then you want to dunk it in some water. Otherwise it won't pick up the chip. Now heat up the piece that you're putting it on and touch it onto there. Sometimes it doesn't go right, especially when you're being watched by a video camera. There it goes. And do I have any more? Can't see any more. Oh, there's one. Can't pick that one up. Now I'm going to heat up my piece. Touch it with the pick, and there it goes. Love it. Now, I'm going to come in with a pair of tweezers. My little ends are over here. Oh, I better flux those up. A little flux on these, even though there's probably plenty. Now, here's where heat control is so much your friend, because you need to have really good heat control for this. You saw how quickly these melted a ball. So what we want to do when we're doing this is get the piece hot first, because it's a little bigger. And right about the point where it melts, now I'm going to touch that on there and come back in and heat it again until that solder flows. Hold it there, and now I've got that all done and perfect. I'll do that again so you can see it, because that was fast. There. There we go. That happened so fast. And that looks good. Now I'm going to heat the bud up first until the solder flows. And then heat this just a little. Touch that onto there and heat the flower. Got it. And there they are. These are really starting to look beautiful. The next step is the little stamens. I used 3 of them in 20 gauge wire, and that'll be the next step. It's probably the hardest part of this, but it's still really quite doable. All right, so what we need for this is 3 pieces of 20 gauge wire for each one, so that means I need 12. So I'm going to cut these approximately 1 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so what you want to do is take 3 of these little wires, and you want to put a little curve in each one so that they're not all touching all the way up. You just want them basically touching at the bottoms of these wires. And what you'll do then is solder those 3 wires together. I'm going to put a little bit more of a curve in that one. All right, solder those 3 wires together, and I'm going to do all 12 of these for all 4 flowers. This is probably the most trickiest part. We want to take this stamen and solder it inside the flower, and then we have to add balls on the ends of this, just like we did for this right here. What I like to do with this is the best that I can. I'm going to cut this off pretty short so that I still want that, make sure that all 3, there's solder there. I'm going to cut that pretty short, and then I'm going to sand it down just so that it's flush on the bottom. So I have decided that I am going to use the medium. I'm just going to pray that this doesn't detach from this as I do it, and I think if I hold that soldered part right there underneath the flower with my 3rd hand, it will act as a heat sink and it won't melt the solder. I'm hoping. All right, what I'm going to do is flux this up and put a few chips. I'm going to put 2 chips of medium solder, and I color my solder before I cut it so I know what's what when it's all over my board in the mess. So I'm going to put 2 chips inside there. They're probably going to pop out as I dry that flux. Let's see. All right, so what I ended up doing was, just like I did the stem at the base of the flower, I balled up the base of these 3 wires and then cut it off and sanded it off so that I can put that right in there and it'll lay flush. So that's already fluxed and soldered. I think what I'm going to do is put a little solder on there. I'm flux. This one's done. This one made it. I just have to do the little balls on the stamen. All right, a little too hot with that torch. And now we're gonna heat this up. Heat this up a little bit, just a little bit, so that when I come in here, when this flux flows, there, It's good. Hallelujah. I just want to trim these off a little bit. And then I'm going to hold them with a pair of pliers. Perfect. I don't know if you can see that, but there we go. Perfect. I love it. All right, and then what you'll do is you'll put a little dab of solder on each one of those, and they're good to go. They should go in the tumbler, and then whatever kind of finish you want to put on them. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps me out a whole lot. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. If you made it this far, you're an awesome person. Thank you for watching my video, and if you found anything useful out of it, please hit the like and subscribe button, and see you next time.